And by the way, just wondering, out of those of you who are joining us today, how many of you have come to one of our meetings for the first time? It's pretty darn good, yeah. You are smart people. Okay. All right, let's get started. About 25 years ago, we had an organization of the East Side Democratic Party here in this part of town, and it went dormant. And so for a while, we had no specific group that enabled people to become active in politics and the elections. And so in 2004, we formed Grassroots North Shore, and so that makes us this year 20 years old. Yeah. And it's thanks to people like you who have come out and have worked elections and have done the hard work and have helped save the state numerous times, particularly in the last one with the state Supreme Court race. And who knows what we can do with this election coming up in November. I know a lot of us are biting our nails, but I think if we stay at it and we keep optimistic, we're going to win this thing, right? Okay, all right. So the meat of the program, we're going to be talking about the fair. Oh, wait, one other thing I got to do. I would like to thank we noticed we have a little audiovisual help here over on camera, Matt Mixon. Kind of sounds like that part of a rock concert where the lead singer says, okay, over on drums we've got. And then handling sound is Claire Hannell. I think Claire might be on the board somewhere. But, you know, applaud and she'll pick you up on the sound. Okie dokie. So we have done it. We have achieved fair maps in the state. So now it's a matter of what we're going to do with it. Now you can look over there. Some of you are already taking the chance to check it out. But here's what the maps, I believe, look like now. And by the way, Deb Patel, who will be speaking later, is one of the leaders behind this movement, so let's give her a special. Yes, we won. More to come. We're gonna get to that later, but we're going to, before that, we're going to give you the world's fastest annual meeting, which you can participate in. This is not we're not an authoritarian organization. Everyone can participate. And as a matter of fact, we're always looking for people to volunteer for the steering committee, and there's lots of really interesting things to do. And so if you feel like you'd like to contribute in that manner, the next person who's coming up, Cheryl Morano, who's the co-chair of this organization, or talk to Deb, and find out how you might be able to help. It's a great group of people, really, and you'll have a fine time, and you'll have a high level of satisfaction knowing that you've been able to contribute to the future of the state and to the Milwaukee metro area. So thank you all for coming. Now let's bring on Cheryl Morano to do the meeting. She's our co-chair. There she is, Deb.
Thanks, Keith. So we'll start with the business end of the meeting. This is our annual meeting. Please take a look at the full-page handout that is on your seat. It lists the slate of steering committee members and officers. The steering committee is responsible for overall policy and direction of our organization. According to our bylaws, we must vote at the annual meeting for our steering committee members. So, can I have a motion to approve the slate of nominees? So moved. Thank you, Kath. Second? Second. Thank you. All right, so to vote, all active members are eligible to vote. Active members are those who have contributed during the year to Grassroots North Shore, pay dues, or have asked for a waiver of dues. So, with that being said, all in favor of electing this slate of steering committee members, designate by raising your hand. Thank you. All right. Any opposed? All right, we have our steering committee. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to first briefly introduce Liz Sumner for some brief remarks.
Hi, I'm Liz Sumner. I'm the Milwaukee County Comptroller. I was just elected this past April. I just want to say thank you to everyone in this organization that helped with collecting signatures, donating, and knocking doors. It was so meaningful to me to have the support of this organization, so thank you.
Thank you. It'll be nice to modernize that office with someone who has financial training. I will next introduce Ann O'Connor for a few brief words.
Thank you, Cheryl. I want to echo Liz's gratitude for folks who knock doors and campaign. I knocked doors with some of you, I know. So I'm Ann O'Connor representing District 1 on the Milwaukee County Board, and that's River Hills, Bayside, Fox Point, Shorewood, Whitefish Bay, and 75% of Glendale. So thanks for all your help in the election. I appreciate it. And I told Shirley I'd be really fast, but today is the 5-year anniversary of Milwaukee County recognizing racism as a public health crisis. They've taken a leadership role, so the 5-year anniversary of Milwaukee County being in that position. Thanks for everyone and your support.
All right, and now it's my pleasure to introduce Jody Habish-Sinekin. As you know, she is running for the 8th Senate seat. She is the perfect fit, I believe, for this district. She's an environmental attorney who was instrumental in developing the Great Lakes Water Compact. She helped with the puppy mill bill and will be a wonderful representative. She also almost flipped the district when it was an R+12. Now it is only an R+2. So we have great hopes for her.
Thank you all. I feel really grateful for Grassroots North Shore. Definitely instrumental in getting that close with that 12+ point Republican advantage in the special election. And I agree with Cheryl and Deb and others who really have allowed us to be in this much better place with fairer maps, that we can really do it this time. But I'm definitely going to need Grassroots North Shore's help again. I'm not kidding that the path to victory is really going to be in your hands with regard to maximizing the turnout in the Milwaukee County communities within Senate District 8. And under these maps, that would be from Whitefish Bay, Fox Point, Bayside, River Hills, up to Mequon, up to Cedarburg and Port Washington, which are 2 new communities, and then west from Mequon to Thiensville, Menominee Falls, Germantown, and some other smaller communities near Menominee Falls. It is a big district. And so the path to victory, just for you strategists there, is big turnout in the Milwaukee County communities, which includes, of course, Brown Deer, which I didn't include in my remarks, but also then doing all that we can, especially in Ozaukee County, which is the bulk of the district. So we're gonna really be reaching out to folks like you, to even those who don't live in the district. We need postcards, we're gonna need texts and phone calls, we're gonna be canvassing, we're going to need these meet and greets that you're gonna hear about, where if you have friends who live in Germantown, friends who live in Port Washington, would you reach out to them so my campaign can reach them and set up these house party type situations where we just are talking and hearing from them and creating a connection. So there are so many ways that we need people outside the district's help, and of course those who are in the district. We need the votes because we need to get the message out that this election, this down ballot election, is essential. Notwithstanding the drama and all the dysfunction at the top of the ticket for many folks, this is where we can make a change in Wisconsin on so many key issues like women's reproductive health care options, our health care in general for the state. with regard to environmental protections, PFAS. There is such a list of things that has been tied up with a dysfunctional legislature that has been way more intent on partisanship and these games with each other that we're reading about practically every day in the paper. We need folks who will be willing to work across the partisan divide with each other, those who are considered more centrists, and will able to work with each other for the betterment of Wisconsin. So that's really the message to get out there, which might appeal also to those Republicans who are not as keen on Trump and all these extremist games. The candidate I will be running against is Dewey Strobel, who is known as the most extreme member of the legislature. I know Deb and Draka can talk about him practically all day, his conduct on the Joint Finance Committee and elsewhere, but being the most extreme member of Wisconsin's legislature is saying a lot. So we need to get that word out. I feel really grateful for all of you being here and engaged and caring about Wisconsin, because I do too. So thanks so much, and I look forward to getting to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. And for those of you who maybe aren't physically able to canvass anymore, we need drivers, because out in Ozaukee County, those houses are far apart. If you have a driver with a canvasser, it makes it so much easier and so much more efficient. So it's something that, with a modicum, thank goodness for GPS, you can do it. So think of that as another option for helping Jody flip this district, which is critical to being able to flip the Senate in 2026 when the second half of the seats come up. All right, so now I'd like to introduce Dana Glastein. She is running for Assembly in District 22. She's lived in Mequon for over 20 years. As an educator at Waukesha County Technical College, she teaches English as a second language. One of her priorities is maintaining a strong public education system, and she was a petitioner in the lawsuit that ended our 10-year nightmare of extreme partisan gerrymandering, or I guess it was 12 years. So, thank you, Dana.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Grassroots North Shore for this opportunity to introduce myself today and for highlighting the importance of the state's new fair maps. My name is Dana Glastein, and I'm the Democratic candidate for State Assembly District 22. This new district includes Port Washington, Grafton, Cedarburg, Northwest Mequon, and the town of Germantown. I'm a Wisconsin native, and I've lived in Mequon for almost 25 years. 2 years ago, my increasingly blue neighborhood was cracked and put into a new district where our votes had no power. As a concerned citizen, I became one of the 19 petitioners in the lawsuit that ended our state's extreme partisan gerrymander, and I am thrilled that with new maps, fair representation is now possible. I am a military wife and mother. For more than 30 years, our family has been dedicated to upholding our democratic principles and serving this country. Recent attacks on our elections have challenged these ideals. Elections in Wisconsin are free and fair, and we must not allow unfounded claims of fraud to undermine our trust and disenfranchise voters. I will fight to uphold transparency in our state government. As an educator at Waukesha County Technical College, I teach adult English as a second language. Every day, I see how access to innovative higher education changes students' lives and supports the ever-changing needs of industries and businesses in our community. Higher education and skills training needs to be affordable and attainable for every Wisconsinite. We must also hire and pay qualified K-12 teachers who can meet the educational needs of all of our children. I will always fight for a strong public education system. The residents of Assembly District 22 know that a woman's right to reproductive health care must be protected. My opponent is an extreme anti-choice conservative whose views are out of touch with the people of the district and the majority of Wisconsinites. Medical decisions must be left to a woman and her healthcare provider without the fear of government intrusion or legal action. I will always protect a woman's right to choose. I entered this race because for too long the issues that are important for the people in my district have been ignored. I will be a voice for all and will work tirelessly between now and November to turn 80-22 blue and help us win back the state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. All right, now I would like to introduce Deb Andraka. As you know, she represents District 23 very, very well in the Assembly. She is one of only two or three people who managed to flip a district during the period of our horrible gerrymander, and she's been a tireless advocate for fair maps. Deb.
Thanks, Cheryl, and thanks, everyone. It is so great to be here with Grassroots North Shore. I am always grateful for all of the hard work and the doors and the phone calls and the postcards, everything that you do to get candidates elected. And I just want you to know how thankful I am that you're here tonight and that you continue to work for all of these great candidates, including myself, so that we continue to flip districts. I'm one of three, but I'm not the last. So we're going to be flipping a lot more districts as we go forward. But I'm here tonight because I've learned a lot in my first 2 terms, and not all of it has been good. And this job, when I'm knocking on doors, the question I get most often is, how do you do your job? And I get this from people who have jobs that I think are really, really hard. And they say, I could never do what you're doing. And what frustrates me the most, a lot of time, it's process and how what we expect to be happening in Madison is not happening. And when I talk to a lot of my Democratic colleagues and I want to talk about what's happening on the Joint Finance Committee or in committee, a lot of times I get, well, nobody wants to hear about process. Nobody really wants to know how mad you were that Assembly, the substitute amendment substitute amendment 1 to, Assembly Bill 395 did this or did that, because people kind of glaze over. But you're Grassroots North Shore, and you are smarter than the average bear, and you're interested in process. So tonight I get to talk a little bit about that, because I want to just put this in the framework of how things are not working and how they will work better once we have our non-gerrymandered maps, because it's important to know where we are now, to know where we could be. And I'm hoping that you'll get a lot of inspiration from where we could be. So I just want to start with 2 quick stories. So when I was in my first term, I was on the Energy and Utilities Committee, and there was a bill that would promote solar energy. And I wanted to bring up an amendment to the bill, because the way the bill was written, it would not have allowed EV chargers that use solar panels and batteries. And I thought this was something that we probably want, particularly in rural areas where you don't necessarily have a grid connection. So I drafted my first amendment, and I was so excited in committee, and I'm waiting for it to be called. And then he says, okay, gavel out, meeting's over, and everyone stands up and walks out of the room. And I went to the committee chair, and I was like, I had an amendment. And he's like, well, it's up to the discretion of the chair. And I thought, if you didn't like my amendment, or if you didn't think it would pass, we could have just voted on it, and you could have voted it down. You shouldn't just ignore it. Up to the chair. Then there was another time where I had another bill. It happened to be energy related too. I believe our utilities should be doing some more planning. Right now, our electric utilities, they don't have what's called an IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, and so a lot of communities are getting hit with big solar farms, or utilities can just invest in in one technology or another. But in most other states, they have an Integrated Resource Plan where they have to project out 5 years. Here's what our resources are. Here's where we could get some more savings using energy efficiency. We need more solar here, but we might need this here. We don't have that in Wisconsin. And so I was talking with one of the lobbyists, and he said, guess what? Good news. There is a couple of Republicans, who are introducing a very similar bill. I said, that's great. So I went to the Republicans and I said, hey, here's your bill, here's mine. It's really similar. How about if we introduce a bipartisan bill? Because we have divided government and we have a Democratic governor, so how about if we do this? He said no. And then a day or two later, they just introduced a bill with all Republicans on it. And I mean, sure, I signed on to the bill, but why, when you have divided government and you have a 50-50 divided state, why would you turn down the opportunity to make progress on an issue that I feel is very important? I think a lot of people think getting more clean energy is important. It's because the system is broken. And we're at a point where it's much more important to score points on the other team than it is to actually work together. And that's part of what's the problem is in Madison right now. So there's a great brochure that is coming out, and I believe it is out, right? I think a lot of you have it, on Fair Maps. And they have a great list, and I refer to this list all the time when I'm talking about what is going on in Madison. And it says, what Wisconsinites want. And all of these issues that are on here, you don't actually have to get it out, but it's a handy list. All of these are issues that poll at well above 50% of voters, Republicans, Democrats, independents, rural areas, suburban areas. These are issues that we should be able to come together and agree. Because 87% of Wisconsinites want universal background checks for gun purchases. Now, around 85% or so also want extreme risk protection orders. And somewhere in the 80s, Wisconsinites believe that we should make gun owners store their guns safely, away from children, away from vulnerable adults, making sure that they're not easily accessible. Maybe if it's in their car, making sure that it is secure. Did we have a hearing on that bill? No, we didn't. We didn't even vote on it. We did have a hearing on the gun shop bill. That was another bipartisan bill led by a Republican. This was an instance where we could have had gun shops trained on suicide prevention, so you know if someone was walking into a gun shop, if they're in trouble. There was money attached to the bill. Well, guess what? It also didn't pass. It had a public hearing. It had very strong bipartisan support. It still didn't pass. On this list, we have renewable energy. 86% of Wisconsinites think we should be investing more in clean energy. And we have a legislature where we introduced a package of bills. There were 20 bills in a package. It was called the Forward on Climate package. Addressed everything from an IRP to making sure that we're weatherizing low-income housing to making sure that we're investing in clean energy. Not one of the 20 bills ever had a public hearing. We did pass a bill that would have restricted the use of, I call it, they're banning the ban. It would have banned a ban on gas stoves because there was a little bit of fear mongering that Biden wants to take away your gas stove. Oh, we passed that bill because that's much higher priority than the 87% of people who would like to see solar energy. The governor vetoed that bill. Education. So on the list, 73% believe we should have a major increase in state aid for special education. Well, we have more school referenda now than we have ever had in the history of the state. And generally, we have held referenda for things like capital projects, to build a new gym, for new facilities. Our schools are having referenda just to keep the doors open. And it's not just in Milwaukee, it is everywhere. And Mequon, Thiensville, is about to have a referenda because they're facing about a $5 million budget shortfall. Have we done anything about that? We increased special education reimbursement from 30 to 33%, which is well short of the 60% that the state has been trying for, the state has promised, and that Governor Evers has put in his budget year after year. One of the most frustrating right now is the literacy bill. So I was on the education committee, and we passed this bipartisan bill that had $50 million in funding that would help train literacy coaches so that we could make sure that teachers who teach reading in younger grades know how to teach phonics. It's called the science of reading. It's more than phonics, but making sure that every teacher knows how to teach, because science and evidence has showed us that this is the method that works best with most students. We passed the bill. Governor Evers signed the bill. Where is it right now? Hung up in Joint Finance. So they sat on the bill that would have selected the different curricula that would have implemented this. They sat on it for months. We finally passed it. But we don't know where the $50 million is. It's stuck in Joint Finance. Abortion, something that's driving a lot of us to the polls. We have not had any meaningful conversations or public hearings on, we had a bill that would have had us put abortion on the ballot, allow voters to decide. Can't do that. But we can pass a bill and have hearings on a bill that would have had felony charges against doctors who performed abortions. So if you look at this list, the things that are passing and the things that we are doing, they really don't line up. And it's frustrating to me. I know it's frustrating to every single voter because I hear it at the doors. Why can't you guys just get anything done? But what I tell them is, just wait, because we have new maps. And the difference that these new maps are going to make is going to be, I believe, profound. Because how I explain it to people at the doors is you have a lot of Democrats who are in very, very blue districts, 70, 80, I think 87% some districts, Democratic voters. Then you have a lot of Republicans that are in a lot of very, very red districts. You don't have a lot in the middle. When I won in 2020, my district was 50-50, and I was able to flip the district, and I won by a little over 1,000 votes. And we used to have 3, maybe 4 districts like that. Right now, we have over a dozen. More than a dozen districts that are within plus or minus 5 percentage points. Now, most of us can't remember what that looks like, right? Because you have your, almost every single vote, we see, 65-34, 64-35. I mean, every single vote we see tends to be along party lines. But when you have people who are elected from purple districts, like I was particularly in 2020, you have to listen to everybody. You can't just look over to your caucus chair and push the button that they're telling you to push. You have to be thoughtful. You have to make sure that you are aligned with where your voters are on a lot of these issues. And I would like to see any Republican get elected in a 50-50 district that just pushes the button that Robin Voss tells him to, because he will be voted out of office because these new maps give us that ability to do so. And we would all like to see the legislature just function like it should. So when you have an opportunity to do a bipartisan bill on energy or abortion rights or school funding or anything, that we actually come together and we talk to each other. We will actually start to see committees function the way they are supposed to. Now, I got into a little kerfuffle with one of the committee chairs because he brought up a bill that was clearly not supported by any of the Democrats on the committee because it banned books. And so I was asking a lot of tough questions as they were handing out these pieces of paper with basically all the juicy parts of the books picked out. And so I was asking the people who were in front of the committee, do you honestly believe that these books have no literary value? And why are you just giving us these quotes? And the head of the committee pulled me aside and he said that I was being very mean to the people who were there testifying, and I should stop asking mean questions. And I told him, if you stop bringing up bad bills, we'll stop asking mean questions, because if you would have just talked to each other and said, hey, we're thinking about bringing this bill up for a vote, we would have told you that bill is awful. And there's no way we will ever support anything like that. So why are we wasting your time? Why are we wasting tax dollars? Why are we wasting per diem accounts to get everybody to go to Madison on a bill that's not going to pass? And if it gets out of committee, it will be vetoed. And that is what is so frustrating. But with new maps, we're going to have people who might say, book banning? I don't think my voters are going to like that very much. And we're going to start to see more coalitions in the middle. We're going to start to be able to reach across the aisle because there will be more people there to reach across to. And there will be more people there who are interested in being able to go back to their 50-50 district and say, well, I don't vote with the Republicans all the time, or I don't vote with Democrats all the time. Here are the instances where I did something different because it's what my voters expect of me. And I can tell you just from my experience on joint finance and in all of the times where they're ignoring my amendments and they're just sort of ignoring me, quite frankly, to as much as they possibly can, we're going to see an ability to start bringing some really interesting coalitions around some of these issues, whether it's abortion, climate change. Imagine, we could say climate change in the Capitol and actually start doing something about it because we haven't been able to do that so far. Expand Medicaid. We are one of 10 states right now. If you look at the map, Wisconsin's this big, lit up yellow state because every single other state around us has done something about that. If we can bring that up for a vote, we would be able to put Republicans and others on record on where they stand. Because that's partly what's going on here. People say, well, why don't they just bring it up for a vote? And why don't they, if they just bring it up for a vote, they have to vote it down. Well, it's because they can go back to their district and say, well, I would vote for all of those gun bills, but, I didn't have to. It's not up to me, it's up to the committee chair, because the committee chair has all the power. So we can hold people accountable. We can have some more coalitions in the middle. We can start to bring things up for votes so that people have to go back to their districts and be held accountable. The last thing that's really wonky that I'm just going to bring up, and I promise Shirley, I'll be very short, are supplemental appropriations. I know, it's wonky. On the Joint Finance Committee, in the past, we used to have, in 2009, when you would have funding, state funding, and you would put it into a supplemental appropriation so that the Joint Finance Committee can vote on things. That's not a bad thing. It means there's more oversight. What's happening right now, where 2009 there was 8, in 2021 there were 26. 26 different bills, including the literacy bill, that were put into these supplemental appropriations. Why? So the Joint Finance Committee, run by Republicans, can be in charge of when those funds get released. So over the next couple of days, you will start hearing a lot about PFAS, about the literacy bill, about all of these bills that are hung up in joint finance. It's because the legislature is not working the way it should work. But there's hope on the horizon because all of you in this room helped get those fair maps. And we're going to elect candidates, whether they're Republican or Democrat, who have to listen to their voters. And that is very exciting. And that's why I can't wait for next session, because we're going to see the biggest change that we have seen in a very, very long time. And we're going to have less, hopefully, we're going to have less lawsuits, more legislating, and legislating on things that Wisconsinites feel are a priority, not any particular political party. So thank you, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Thanks so much, Deb. It's nice having a rock star representing your area. Now I would like to introduce Grassroots North Shore co-chair, Debbie Patel. She is also the co-lead and the founder of North Shore Fair Maps. She was a Whitford plaintiff, so she's been at this Fair Maps thing for a very long time. She will walk us through the changes to our maps and what it means. If you have questions for either her or Deb Andraka, please take I think cards were distributed, or we can come by. You can raise your hand if you don't have one, want one. Write down your question. We'll be gathering them for the Q&A portion. Debbie, thanks.
So some of us are people that can just use a mic, but some of us need support for our papers. I'm in the latter group. Thank you all for coming out, leaving your yards and your gardens, and coming here this afternoon. I spent the morning planting flowers that I bought last week, and in fact, if you looked closely, you could probably find some dirt under my nails, and I noticed I had a couple of chipped fingernails. I hated to come inside. Then again, I was really exhausted, so I was very glad, because I was working new muscles, to come inside. and I was glad to come to talk to you today. I'm supposed to talk to you about our new maps. Some of you heard Chris Larson earlier this year in a Zoom. Oh my God, we're in person. Can you believe it? You heard him talk about getting elected in 2010, thinking that he would do wonderful things, and he entered into map hell, basically. And it was a desert where it was difficult, if not impossible, to get anything to grow. And it was that way for a very long time. I personally didn't discover this until 2017, and my reasoning to get into the Fair Maps movement started with who was then my congressman, Glenn Grothman. Anyway, and that's when I saw how the maps were really squirrely. And then I started looking at the state maps and going, well, something is seriously amiss. And when I was asked to be a Whitford plaintiff, I got an email asking me if I was interested. And in my deposition later, I said, I was so excited, I jumped up and down. And the lawyer who was trying to convince me, I guess, that the League of Women Voters had coerced me, he said, well, what did you do after you jumped up and down? I said, yes, I want to be a Whitford plaintiff. Anyway, so finally in 2024, we have new maps. You don't need to applaud. Well, you can if you want to applaud. And I've been in the trenches since 2017, but I know people that were in the trenches in 2010. And those are the people that really deserve the thanks for getting us to this point. So we have fair maps. We don't have maps that will guarantee Democrats get elected. And we got a lot of feedback on that after these maps got adopted. This state, as Cheryl Moranta will say, gerrymandering is a politician problem. We don't want maps that guarantee Democrats. We don't want maps that guarantee Republicans, because we do not live in a state that can justify those maps. We want competitive maps. Look at our state elections and how close they are. We want 50-50 maps, and that's what we have, and they are fair. You have this brochure, and inside the brochure, I created this because I'm extremely talented. There's a little insert. They are hand cut because I was too lazy to go to Office Depot. And what I want you to know about these are that most of you in this room fall into the categories on one side of this little insert or the other. You've met some of these people today. Jody Habesh-Sinekin is running for the Senate in the 8th. Dana Glastein, Deb Andraka, William Walter. The reason that I bring this particular district up is that William Walter is running in the 24th, which is, you've heard about the others, but the 24th is basically, I think, Germantown and Menominee Falls. It's a tough district. This young man is what I would call like a super liberal lefty who's taking it on. And we are so grateful to him. We are grateful to everyone running, because that helps Jody, whether they win or not. It helps Jody, and guess what? It helps Joe Biden, and it helps Tammy Baldwin. Every time somebody runs in a race, it works up and down ballot. So these maps have not just given us a better shot to have people representing us in in Madison, but it's going to help Joe Biden, it's going to help Tammy, because everyone is going to be out working their butts off to get elected. On the other side, if you happen to live in the 4th Senate District, many of you in Glendale, maybe all of Glendale, are now in that district. You may not even know yet that there is a special election, a special primary on July 2, and there's a special election. You're going to have to get your reading glasses off or on or whatever. There's a July 30 special election. This race will probably be won by a Democrat. So there are 2 members of the African American community, both of whom are sitting assembly people, who are running for this seat. So if you live in Glendale, you're going to have to make a decision about which of these 2 women you want elected. So I wanted to point that out. Is Shorewood as well? Okay, sorry. I should know the map better, shouldn't I? But if it doesn't affect me personally, I don't care. I'm just going to say that ProPublica asked me for some comments after the maps got in, and they said, "What do you think of your district?" And I said, "Well, actually, I haven't really looked at my district because it's not about me." So that's what I said to the press. I'm telling you the truth now, but okay. So we have a chance to take the Assembly in 2024, and we have a chance to take the Senate in 2026. We won't get to the Senate in 2026 unless we do well in 2024, just so you know that. Our new maps have given us hope for the first time in a long time. But hope is not a plan. Hope by itself is nothing. Or as someone said, a wise woman said, hope means there's work to be done, because when you are hopeless, there's no point. We have hope, it means there's work to be done. The only kind of hope that is really worthwhile is hope with a plan. That plan is to reach every voter we can, turn over every rock, bring out every vote. And that's where you come in. Wisconsin needs your help, and let's face it, America needs all of our help, and there is work to do. If you can knock doors, knock doors. I started knocking doors in 2018 after I told my new organizer that I couldn't possibly knock doors, and she said, then make phone calls. No, I don't do phone calls. And then before you know it, I'd given up on postcards, and I was not making phone calls, but I was knocking doors. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. Except my husband, he's the driver. Okay, so if you absolutely cannot knock doors, you can drive, or you can make phone calls. Knocking doors is 5 times more effective than any other form. Or relationship. There's texting, there's all the things. Reaching out to the people you know. The Democratic Party has this new texting system where I've used it before, you reach people that you know, and when I tried it, I can't believe how many people said, oh yeah, I have voted, or whatever, and they didn't say, why are you bothering me? Because they were people that knew me and all still liked me for some reason. Up and down the ballot, we need your help. So this is where things stand, and I want to leave you with this message about where things stand. We have fair maps, and we have a real chance in November. Joe Biden is a good president. I think he may be the best president in my lifetime or more. What do the Republicans have? They have Donald Trump. They have a legislature that hasn't worked in a dozen years. They don't have what we have. We would rather be us than them. This is Wisconsin, and it's gonna be scary. So don't watch the news, make news. Yeah. And another thing I say is, when the house is on fire, it doesn't make sense to hide under the bed. There is work to do. And as Simon Rosenberg told us at North Shore Fair Maps on last Monday, do more, worry less. The more you do, the less time you have to worry, and the less worried you are. I told you I planted flowers this morning. I love planting flowers. Everything is new and fresh. I've just got to spend money at the garden store. I go home, even the dirt looks good. But I'm not traditionally as good at watering, right? Watering seems like such a chore, but that is how flowers grow, water and fertilizer. Remember that we lived in a desert for 12 years. We have a new garden. We have new maps. Will we help that garden grow? It is up to us. I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to water this summer. I really am. I'm willing to give my flowers care and feeding, and I ask that all of us give these maps care and feeding. We can work hard so we worry less, and we darn well better. So thank you. And then we're taking questions. Good. Oh, where to stand? Sure, we can stand up here. Perfect. We can stand and we can lean on.
Yes, have our papers.
Yes, have our papers in front of us, even if we don't use them.
So we're here for questions.
Yeah, they're coming, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you grab them from her? Sure. Okay.
Okay. Question. Can a groundswell of Democratic support down ballot be enough to bubble up and overcome Biden's issues with Israel?
I'm going to vote yes on that one. In Wisconsin, I'm going to vote yes. I will tell you something we learned about Michigan at the North Shore Fair Maps meeting with Simon Rosenberg, is there is a lot of concern, and I'm not stating, as far as I'm concerned, people should be allowed to go out and protest and do all that kind of stuff, but I'm hoping that they will come home in November and realize that Biden is a far superior choice. But what Simon said about Michigan was really interesting, because Michigan has what we all perceive as a very large Muslim community. And he said that there's 100,000 of those votes in Michigan, and that could easily be outweighed by something else. So even though you see a lot of it, it's very public, you see it, you hear about it, it may not be that big a deal at the voting booth. That's my thought on it. According to, I mean, we are not, this is not 1968, okay? So we shouldn't dwell on it being like 1968, because I remember 1968, and my dad was protecting presidential candidates that year, so I heard a lot about what was going on in 1968, and that's not what we've got now.
And excuse me, I would also say it's very different to complain about your choice than it is to make a choice to vote for Donald Trump. So I think it's okay when we hear people, voicing their opinions, and we can be disappointed with our elected officials, that's fine. But it's very different for someone to actually say, I will not vote for Joe Biden, and I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And I think the more we can make that choice clear, that those are the choices that you have, and how important it is to make sure that someone who has our values is at the top of the ticket. It is okay to disagree with somebody. It is okay to disagree with someone in elected office. You shouldn't agree with someone 100% of the time. Anyone who's married probably knows what I'm saying here. But at the end of the day, it is very important to make sure that Joe Biden is reelected.
Let me add one other thing that I say to people all the time, because I voted for John Anderson? Okay, I learned my lesson. So what people have to understand is that if you don't vote, you should assume that you are making a positive vote for the person you like less. That's basically the decision you're making. Okay.
Next question.
That's for you.
That's for me. Joint Finance Committee, yay. How is it that one unknown member can kill approved funding for approved bills or projects?
Yeah, how is that happening?
Yeah, anonymous objector. Let's talk about that. So the way it stands right now is, I mentioned supplemental appropriation, so now you all know sort of what we're talking about. So if we're talking about, for instance, Knowles Nelson, that's the funding is submitted to the Joint Finance Committee for a request, and then it has a passive review. And during that passive review period, any member of the committee can raise an objection. And when the objection is raised, every member of the committee gets a piece of paper that says, an objection has been raised, a hearing will be held. It does not say when the hearing will be held. So what they have been doing is raising objections and then never scheduling the hearing. And so that has the chilling effect of basically, I'm talking about Knowles Nelson specifically, the chilling effect of, well, I'm not even going to submit. Or I'm going to submit a lot of, a project for $249,000 because anything over $250,000 gets the passive review process. And there's a lawsuit right now. So Governor Evers has filed a lawsuit against the Republican members of the Joint Finance Committee to try to say either you hold a hearing within 14 days, within the next month or so, so that the objector can talk about their objection. But it's bad in two different respects. First of all, that they never schedule a hearing. And second of all, you don't have an opportunity to know who objected and why. And the people who are submitting the proposals don't know that either. And so with Cedar Gorge, there were all kinds of funding that had deadlines and banks, and you cannot wait indefinitely for that. So the lack of transparency and also just the inability to know what the objection was are at the crux of the lawsuit that is pending before the Wisconsin Supreme Court right now. So I hope to see that get fixed.
And I hope the day comes when we spend less time in court and more time in the legislature.
Less lawsuits, more legislating.
That's right.
All right. What is the status of a bipartisan bill that has been around for a few years now? It is a proposal to help veterans with disabilities with property tax relief. I heard it might have a chance to pass. It should have passed. I mean, this was one of the bills. It's the spousal, surviving spouse property tax credit. I was on the governor's Blue Ribbon Commission for Veteran Opportunity, and this was one of their top policy priorities. And it is unbelievably frustrating to me that Republicans who don't waste any opportunity to fly the flag would not pass the #1 priority of the veterans community in Wisconsin, which is the spousal tax credit. So we, at the very, very end of session, when we were negotiating what bills would pass, we said, you know, if we could get 2 bills passed, I think it was Medicaid expansion and this one, and neither one of them got passed. So we're still fighting for it, and you'd have to ask the Republican chairs why they haven't moved this forward. I don't have a good answer. There is no good answer.
So I was talking to my Republican assemblyman, and I asked why it was that Wisconsin didn't accept the Medicaid expansion. And he gave a bunch of nonsensical things, and then he finally said, we don't want to be dependent on federal funds. And I said, okay, so Michigan takes them, and Iowa takes them, and Illinois takes them, and Minnesota takes them, and now there's only 10 of us, states that don't. And we're doing that because we don't want to be dependent, so we've let all that money go for all those years. I mean, it's just amazing that it's nonsensical. Anyway, sorry. I just had to give that editorial comment.
This is a question for Jody. So, Jody,
Come on up, Jody.
will you make criminal justice reform part of your campaign, considering Dewey Strobel's Build More Prisons position?
Yes.
Okay, you're done.
Seriously. The list, I've been really digging into Dewey Strobel's legislative history, and I actually recommend that you do it too, just especially since you are going to be the messengers for this Senate district run as well, as for the reasons I mentioned. It is so long. He basically says no, no, no to most things that even resemble progress. But in this regard, he is moving us even further backward. Like many of you, I have friends who are public defenders and who are involved with criminal justice system and interested in reform. We have so much to accomplish just to rectify how we have moved backwards. His bill is going to dig a deeper hole for us. So one thing I didn't say, but I think you inferred from some of the other comments, is that even with these fairer maps, the only way that Wisconsin can achieve a Democratic majority in 2026, the one and only way, is if we flip Senate District 8. It is the must-have seat. We will still get closer if we don't get it. We will have the compromise or opportunities for compromise and progress that Deb Andraka spoke to. But without flipping Senate District 8, we cannot have the opportunity to call for those public hearings. We can't introduce the bills that we want. We can't call for the votes. All the dysfunction that we've been hearing about from speaker after speaker will not be remedied unless we get this Senate district flipped. So that really is why I decided to run again. It was really with the support of Grassroots North Shore people, many who are in this room, who helped me see how it is so important to lean in, to not look past this opportunity to affect lasting change for Wisconsin. It's just been too long under the dysfunction we've been hearing about. So yes to that question for criminal justice reform, to the prison state, to the failure to expand Medicare, to move us away from this 1849 abortion ban boogeyman. We have so much that we need to move forward on, but we really do need to get to that majority by 2026, and we can do it. We can make the most important step in 2024 in 5 months' time. So thank you for the question and for all of your help, too.
So, Jody, no pressure. No pressure. Yeah, we have to do it. Okay, us, no pressure. We have to do it, right? Okay, we're up to it, though. I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to start with prison gerrymandering. Can prison gerrymandering be stopped? Some of you probably don't even know what that is, but prison gerrymandering means that if, for example, a private prison, they put it in a rural community, then the prisoners, who typically in Wisconsin are from the Milwaukee area, let's just say, then they count in that rural community. So they go into that, typically Republicans' district. They don't get credit for where they actually call home. And it's a horrible, it's not just a democracy problem, but it's a racial problem in this state when you consider who most of the incarcerated people are. It can, I guess I would say it must be stopped, and I know there's work on it around the country, and it wasn't something that we could tackle this go around because at the end of the day, the court had to thread a needle to avoid the United States Supreme Court, and it did a very careful threading of the needle, and it couldn't take on anything like this, but it should be stopped. Yeah, I know, there is a bill, and I'm backing it, but I mean, I think let's turn to like what should really, because this is the rest of the question. How can we get a process for competitive maps in the future? The legislature has shown contempt for voters. Oh, yeah, really, yes, they have. By eliminating non-binding referendum from us. Yeah, we can't even say, we just want fair maps. We can't even say that anymore. Can we get this right back? The brochure that you have talks about a path to this permanent fix. And that is that if we hold the people we elect accountable and we say, we start by getting a statute that declares there should be nonpartisan, independent commission. That's the first step. From there, you take it to a constitutional amendment. That is the path to permanent victory. Speaking of constitutional amendments, I'm going to digress for a minute. In this little handout that I created and cut myself with my dirty fingernails before I came, I referenced that in the August primary, even if you don't care about who's running in the primary, there are 2 dastardly constitutional amendments, far worse than the ones from the spring. You're going to hear more about them. There's a serious work going in on how to message that because it's very difficult to give good messages on constitutional amendments. But just vote no, that's what I say.
And just a word about the constitutional amendments. You might be wondering, why are we suddenly having all of these constitutional amendments? Honestly, if the majority party put as much effort into getting around the governor's veto as they did in legislating, the state would be in a much better place. So constitutional amendments are filed as joint resolutions, and they pass, and they cannot be vetoed. So once they pass the legislature in 2 consecutive legislative sessions, so in the biennial, so it passes, and then you introduce it with the next legislature and it passes, the governor can't stop that. So if you have a situation where your bills keep getting vetoed because the bills that you're introducing are not bipartisan, but you would still like to inflict your agenda on people regardless of what voters say, one way to do it is with constitutional amendments. And that's why you're starting to see so many of them. And you're starting to just see all of these games with the Joint Finance Committee and the 1,000-year vetoes and everything else. It's just a symptom of how broken our system is.
They couldn't get everything, apparently, in the lame duck legislation, so now they're turning to the constitutional amendment process. It's all gamesmanship. I think that one's yours. Yes, the July. On July 14th, we're going to have an outdoor program. We're going to be in the fresh air, and we're going to talk about the constitutional amendments.
This question says the bill for EV charging system has passed. Yes, that has finally passed. We would have lost over $60 million in federal funding had that not passed. Has the money been released? So that bill enables us to get funding from the federal government to set up electric vehicle charging stations along federal highways. The other thing that the bill did was it gave an exemption so that we are starting to charge by the kilowatt hour and tax by the kilowatt hour. Before this bill, you couldn't tax electricity by the kilowatt hour. And so that bill, I don't know if it had a big appropriations to it because the second part, has the money been released? I don't know that there is money to release. But on EVs, I do want to say that the reason that a lot of us, I have an electric car, I also have a hybrid car, I think many of you here do, and you get that little fee every time you renew your registration because you're paying extra. The reason you're paying extra is for a good reason at first. That our roads are paid for with gas taxes, and the less gas you buy, then you're not paying for the roads that we all use. Well, okay, fair. They just doubled the fees, and now they passed the tax without lowering the fee. So if you drive a hybrid or an electric vehicle, you're actually getting double charged. And on the Joint Finance Committee, I asked my Republican colleagues if they would join me in lowering taxes for all of us who drive these vehicles. They declined, but please look for that in the next budget. We will be trying to address that.
So we only have time for one more question. I'm sorry, but you could ask us afterwards if you want to. And so I'm taking the last question. If I want to be a driver for canvassers, who should I contact? That's a perfect last question. And that would be, you can contact Cheryl Moranto. You can talk to her today. Wave your arm. You were up here a lot. Otherwise, you can send an email to Grassroots North Shore. And we definitely do want drivers. If you've ever canvassed in Mequon, you want a driver. It makes life, especially if you're not from Mequon, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize that enough. We do a lot of doors. In 2020, I did very few. But normally, in normal elections, which we're back to now, and you have long days. And having someone to drive you and just drop you off at doors or up those winding driveways, it makes the day so much more pleasant. So on behalf of all of the candidates, if you're ever willing to just drive one of us for a couple hours in the afternoon, it makes a world of difference, and we will be greatly, greatly appreciative.
Yes, we're going to close now. We're going to close now with remarks from, I didn't forget you, Mark, even though you're hiding there, with remarks from the head of the membership committee. One of my favorites for going out and canvassing and doing all sorts of great stuff, Mark Guinness. Come on up, Mark.
Thank you, Deb. B. Okay. Mark Twain once said, quote, "It usually takes me 3 weeks to prepare for a good impromptu speech," which is what this is. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Debbie, and thank everyone from Grassroots North Shore for making this event possible. We also need to thank all of the great candidates, to which we owe a great debt of gratitude for their sacrifice and dedication. And let's not forget the many volunteers who allowed these people to succeed and be here. As Debbie said, my name is Mark Guinness. I co-chair the membership committee of Grassroots North Shore with Kath Michael, who is here somewhere. We also welcome our newest member to the committee, Chuck Adam. Is Chuck here? That's more applause than I got. Okay. 500 years ago, Thomas Hobbes described the natural state of man as, quote, "nasty, brutish, and short." Who knew that 500 years later, these same words, with minor modification, could be applied to the Republican nominee for president. Clearly, he is nasty. For sure, he is brutish. And he does have short hands. Hobbes also gave warning to all of the MAGA supporters out there, not here, out there. Quote, hell is truth, seen too late. Even Mark Twain got into the political act with this perfect observation of Donald Trump. Quote, it is better to keep your mouth closed and let people think you are a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. We all know it's going to be a tough road to preserve our democracy. So what can we do? Well, first, become a member of Grassroots North Shore by going to the clearly marked table, membership table, and if you're not sure if you're a member, renew it anyway for a year. Prices remain $5 for a student, $20 for an individual, and $30 for a family, which before the pandemic was less than a large pizza with 3 toppings. But now it's only 2 toppings, but it's still a great bargain. So what else can you do? As you've heard, you can volunteer for the myriad tasks required for us to prevail, like canvassing door to door or be a driver, phone banking, my favorite, postcard writing, literature drops, call your representative, and write letters to the editor, host a party, a house party, attend events like these, and don't forget Grassroots North Shore next event on July 14th at Doctors Park, where we will focus on 2 more noxious ballot questions. Get involved, get engaged with Grassroots North Shore. Check out our great website. Look at the handout on the back. You will see the list of the committees and the needs and wants each committee has. We really do need your help to support this wonderful and unique organization. Bottom line is, we really would love to have your help. Heed these words from Dr. Seuss, quote, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not, end quote. And in conclusion, take comfort in these words by H.L. Mencken, quote, in this world of sin and sorrow, there is always something to be thankful for. As for me, I rejoice that I am not a Republican, end quote. Thank you.